Admiral Patricia Wells sat in her command chair aboard the orbital defense station and watched the reports flooding in from the human fleet. Most ship captains were requesting permission to evacuate Earth's population. Some were asking for reinforcements. That did not exist. But one report was different from all the others. Captain Maria Santos had sent her a battle plan that made no sense at all. Wells read the plan 3 times before calling Santos directly. The communication screen flickered to life, showing Santos on the bridge of the Liberty. The younger woman looked calm and determined, which worried Wells even more. "Maria, I have reviewed your tactical proposal," Wells said carefully. "You want to abandon all standard military formations and use what you call organized chaos. The War Council thinks you have lost your mind." Santos smiled on the screen. "Admiral, with all respect, the War Council has been trying to fight the Zephyrians like we are fighting other humans. But they are not humans. They think in patterns and probabilities. Their whole way of fighting is based on predicting what we will do next." She brought up her own tactical display and shared it with Wells. "Look at every battle we have lost in the past 6 months. The Zephyrians position their ships perfectly to counter our textbook moves. They have studied our military doctrine and learned to beat it every time. But what if we stopped using doctrine completely?" Wells studied the battle records. Santos was right. In every engagement, human forces had followed proper military tactics and been defeated by enemies who knew exactly what those tactics would be. "You are suggesting we throw away centuries of military knowledge," Wells said. "I am suggesting we use the one advantage they cannot calculate," Santos replied. "Human unpredictability." Lieutenant Danny Parker interrupted their conversation with an urgent message. "Captain, the Zephyrian Fleet Commander is transmitting on all frequencies. They are offering humanity one final chance to surrender." The alien voice came through their translation systems as cold and mechanical. "Human vessels, you have 30 minutes to power down your weapons and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your species. This is your final warning." Santos looked directly at Admiral Wells through the communication link. "Tell me, Admiral, what do you think they expect us to do now?" Wells thought about it. "Standard procedure would be to either accept their terms or prepare defensive positions around Earth." "Exactly," Santos said. "They have calculated both responses. If we surrender, they win. If we take defensive positions, they overwhelm us with superior numbers and firepower. Either way, we lose." She leaned forward in her chair. "But what if we do something they have not calculated? What if we attack them directly instead of defending?" The idea was so shocking that Wells almost laughed. "Maria, that would be suicide. Their fleet outnumbers us 8-1. Only if we fight the battle they expect," Santos said. "Admiral, I need you to trust me. Give me permission to implement my plan. If it fails, we die. But if we follow conventional tactics, we die anyway. At least this way, we die trying something new." Wells looked at the tactical displays showing the overwhelming enemy force. The math was brutal and clear. Conventional tactics gave them almost no chance of victory. Santos was right about that much. "What exactly are you planning to do?" Wells asked. Santos grinned. "I am going to teach our computers to be as crazy as humans." Across the fleet, Santos began implementing her radical plan. She sent encrypted orders to every ship captain, telling them to override their tactical computers. The artificial intelligence systems that normally calculated optimal firing solutions and movement patterns were to be shut down completely. Chief Engineer Bobby Martinez aboard the Liberty worked frantically in the engine room. He was following orders that seemed designed to sabotage their own ship. "Captain, if we disable our combat computers, we will be flying blind," Martinez warned over the communication system. "Our targeting will be terrible. Our formation flying will be impossible." "Perfect," Santos replied from the bridge. "Bobby, the Zephyrians have been beating us because their computers can predict what our computers will do. Time to show them what human instinct looks like." On other ships throughout the fleet, similar conversations were taking place. Captain Jennifer Walsh of the UES Dakota questioned her orders to begin broadcasting random Earth music on all frequencies during combat. Captain Peter Johnson of the UES Phoenix wondered why he was supposed to fly his ship backwards while firing missiles in every direction, but they followed their orders because they trusted Maria Santos. She had kept more of her crew alive than any other captain in the fleet. If she thought crazy tactics could work, they were willing to try. The Zephyrian fleet maintained its perfect formation as the deadline approached. Aboard their command ship, the Dominion Spear, Tactical Prime Zektar studied the human vessels with growing confidence. Analysis of human defensive preparations, Zektar ordered his tactical computer. Human fleet remains in loose formation. Around the third planet, the computer reported. Ship position suggests they are preparing standard defensive pattern 7 or possibly pattern 12. Recommend maintaining current approach vector for optimal engagement. Subcommander Veltash monitored human communications. Tactical Prime, the humans are transmitting on multiple frequencies, but the messages appear to be random noise rather than tactical coordination. Explain, Zektar demanded. They are broadcasting what appears to be primitive entertainment. Audio rather than military communications. It makes no tactical sense. Zektar considered this information. In 47 previous battles, humans had always used logical communication protocols. Broadcasting entertainment during combat was completely irrational. Probability that humans have suffered command structure breakdown? He asked, calculating. The computer replied. Based on stress factors and tactical situation, probability of human command failure is 63%. Recommend proceeding with standard assault pattern. Meanwhile, Santos made final preparations aboard the Liberty. She walked through the ship, talking to her crew and making sure everyone understood their role in the coming battle. In the weapons bay, Gunner Kate Williams was confused by her orders. Captain, you want me to fire at random coordinates instead of targeting enemy ships? Kate, for 6 months we have been aiming at exactly where the enemy expected us to aim, Santos explained. They position their shields and armor to stop our most accurate shots. But what if our shots were not accurate at all? What if we fired at places where they have no defenses because no logical person would aim there? Williams thought about it and started to smile. So we hit them where they are not protected because they never expected to be hit there. Now you're getting it, Santos said. In the navigation section, pilot Tom Baker was studying his orders to fly in completely random patterns. Captain, this goes against everything I learned in flight school. Tom, flight school taught you to fly predictably so your wingmates could coordinate with you, Santos said. But predictable flying is what got us shot down in every previous battle. Today I want you to fly like you are drunk. Baker laughed despite his fear. I can do that, Captain. As the final minutes counted down, Santos returned to the bridge. Her crew was ready. Across the fleet, 37 ships were prepared to abandon all military logic and fight like no human force had ever fought before. Admiral Wells sent a final message. Maria, the entire fleet is watching. If this works, you will be remembered as the greatest tactical genius in human history. If it fails, quote Santos interrupted her. If it fails, there will be no one left to remember anything. But Admiral, humans have been doing impossible things since we learned to walk upright. Today we add one more impossible thing to the list. The communication system announced 5 minutes until the battle would begin. Santos looked at her crew and saw fear mixed with determination in their faces. Remember everyone, we are not trying to outshoot them or outfight them, she said. We are trying to out-crazy them. Show these aliens what happens when humans stop making sense. The first Zephyrian ship to break formation was the ZCS Destroyer, commanded by Captain Yek-Smol. He had been monitoring Danny Parker's communications from his bridge when the human's final words reached him. Without waiting for orders from his superiors, he activated his ship's jump drive and fled the system. Captain Yek-Smol returned to formation immediately. Admiral Voxstar commanded over the fleet communication network, but Captain Yek-Smol was already gone. disappeared into hyperspace like he was running from the end of the universe itself. Danny Parker remained standing beside his chair on the bridge of the Terra Nova. The alien equipment around him sparked and smoked as it failed one piece at a time. His quiet voice continued to reach every Zephyrion in the fleet, no matter how far their ships were from his position. You came to our space because you thought we were easy prey? You hunt our ships because you believe we are weak and helpless. General. HFY tried to maintain control of the situation, but his hands shook as he operated his command console. All units, maintain position. Do not let one human frighten you into retreat. Danny's head turned toward the general's location, though. There was no way he could have known where the alien commander stood among all the equipment and barriers. Fear is the correct response, General HFY. You should be afraid, not of me, but of what I represent. The fact that Danny knew his name and rank sent fresh waves of terror through the Zephyrian commander. This information had never been shared with the human prisoners. I am not special among my people, Danny continued. I am not a warrior or a scientist or a leader. I work in communications because I like helping others stay connected. But every human carries the same potential. I am showing you now. Dr. Crickstall watched her instruments as they registered energy readings beyond anything she had seen in 30 years of military science. General space-time distortions are increasing around the human's position. Reality itself is bending in response to his mental activity. Every human farmer who looks at his crops and knows whether the harvest will be good. Every human parent who senses when their child is in danger even from great distances. Every human artist who creates something beautiful without understanding how they knew what to create. Another ship broke formation. Then another. Captains who had commanded vessels for decades suddenly ordered their crews to retreat from one unarmed human. All of them are touching the same force I am using now. The difference is that you have made me stop holding back. Admiral Kethran stared at his scanner displays as readings showed impossible energy signatures coming from Danny's location. Admiral Voxstar, recommend immediate withdrawal. This human is generating power levels that could threaten our entire fleet. I can see the fear in your minds, Danny said, his whisper somehow carrying more authority than any shout. You are remembering stories your ancestors told about the old races. The beings who could destroy stars with their thoughts. The creatures who built galaxies and tore holes in reality for their own amusement. More ships began to leave. The disciplined formation that had surrounded the Terra Nova was breaking apart as individual captains decided that survival was more important than following orders. Those old races are not myths, they were real, and humanity carries their genetic memory in our deepest consciousness. Admiral Voxstar felt his resolve cracking as he watched his fleet scatter. Human, what do you want from us? Danny's response was immediate and clear. Nothing. We want nothing from you except for you to leave us alone. We can negotiate terms, the Admiral continued desperately. We can establish trade agreements, share territory, find ways to coexist peacefully. You misunderstand our nature, Danny replied. We do not want your territory or your resources or your technology. We want to explore the universe and learn about the wonders it contains, but you have chosen to see us as prey. The energy readings around Danny's position spiked again. Several more pieces of alien equipment exploded in showers of sparks. The lights on General HFY's flagship flickered and dimmed. We tried to respond to your aggression with the limited tools you understand. Ships and weapons and military tactics. But these are just games we play with technology. They are not examples of what we can really do. Captain Jake Morrison watched from behind the energy barrier as his communications officer spoke words that were causing one of the galaxy's most powerful fleets to flee in terror. Danny, do you know what you're saying? For the first time since he had begun speaking, Danny turned to look at his captain. His expression was gentle and confused, like someone waking from a strange dream. Captain, what's happening? Why are there so many alien ships here? The sudden change in Danny's demeanor shocked everyone who heard it. The voice that had been describing impossible powers now sounded like that of a young man who was genuinely puzzled by his situation. "You don't remember what just happened?" Dr. Lisa Crawford asked. Danny looked around at the sparking alien equipment and the panicking Zephyrian soldiers. "I remember being scared when they attacked us. Then I started thinking about home. About my grandmother's garden back on Earth. She used to tell me that if you sat very still and listened carefully, you could hear the conversations between the stars." General LaughedHFY watched this exchange with growing horror. The human who had just demonstrated godlike abilities was now acting like an ordinary young man with no memory of what he had done. "I must have been daydreaming," Danny continued. "I do that sometimes when I'm stressed. Did I miss something important?" Admiral Voxstar made his decision. Whatever Danny Parker was or was not, the risk of staying near him was too great for his fleet to handle. "All ships, immediate withdrawal to hyperspace. Execute emergency jump protocols." "Sir, what about the human prisoners?" General LaughedHFY asked. "Leave them. Do not take anything from this system. Do not engage with these humans again under any circumstances." Within minutes, the mighty Zephyrian fleet was gone. 23 warships fled into hyperspace like they were escaping from the wrath of gods themselves. Captain Morrison and his crew found themselves alone on their damaged ship, surrounded by broken alien equipment but otherwise unharmed. The energy barriers holding them prisoner had failed when the alien generators overloaded. "Danny, what did you do to them?" Pete Collins asked. Danny looked genuinely confused by the question. "I didn't do anything. I was just sitting here thinking about grandmother's flowers. She always said they knew secrets about the universe that people had forgotten." Dr. Crawford ran a medical scan on Danny with her portable equipment. "His brain patterns are completely normal now. Whatever happened during those 12 hours, it's over." As the Terra Nova's crew worked to repair their ship and continue their journey home, Admiral Voxstar's fleet carried a new message across. Zephyrian space. The official report would become required reading in their military academies for generations. "Do not engage the humans. They are not what they appear to be. What we interpreted as weakness is actually restraint. What we saw as limited technology is actually conscious choice to use simple tools. The humans are not a young species learning to use the universe. They are an old power that has been sleeping, and we were fortunate that they chose to give us a warning instead of demonstrating their true capabilities." The war against humanity ended that day, not with a great battle or a peace treaty, but with the whispered words of one quiet young man who reminded the galaxy that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who choose not to fight back. Danny Parker never fully understood what had happened during those 12 hours of silence. But sometimes, when he looked up at the stars, he could swear he heard them whispering back to him in voices that sounded like his grandmother explaining the secrets hidden in her garden. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Zephyrian Empire added a new rule to their military code: never wake up something that is sleeping peacefully, because you might not like what it becomes when it opens its eyes. The battle began exactly at 0800 hours ship time. The Zephyrian fleet moved forward in perfect formation, 300 black ships arranged in precise, geometric patterns that maximized their firepower while protecting their most important vessels. Their command ship, the massive Dominion Spear, sat in the center of the formation like a spider in its web. Captain Maria Santos watched the enemy advance and keyed her fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Santos. Remember what we practiced? We are not trying to win through superior firepower. We are trying to confuse them into making mistakes. Execute Operation Madness in 3, 2, 1. What happened next had never been seen. In the history of space warfare, the human fleet exploded outward like a bomb had gone off in their formation. Every ship flew in a different direction with no apparent plan or coordination. The UES Liberty dove below the orbital plane while spinning in wild circles. The USS Dakota began broadcasting old rock music on all military frequencies while firing missiles at empty space. The used Phoenix started flying backwards toward the enemy while launching every weapon it had in random directions aboard the Dominion Spear. Tactical Prime Zektar stared at his displays in confusion. The Zephyrian Tactical Computer, which had successfully predicted human behavior in 47 previous battles, began showing error messages. Tactical Prime, the humans appear to be malfunctioning, reported Subcommander Veltash. Their ships are moving without any strategic purpose. Several vessels are firing at coordinates that contain no targets whatsoever. Analysis, Zektar demanded from his computer. Unable to determine human tactical objective, the computer replied. Movement patterns do not match any known military doctrine. Weapons fire appears random. Recommend maintaining current formation and engaging targets as they present themselves. But as the chaotic human ships swarmed around them, the perfect Zephyrian formation began to develop problems. Ships that had positioned themselves to counter logical human attacks found themselves completely out of position against the insane human movements. Captain Jennifer Walsh of the Dakota was having the time of her life. She had always been told to fly in formation and follow orders precisely. Now she was diving and spinning her ship like a mad person while her weapons officer fired at anything that looked interesting. Captain, I just hit 3 enemy ships by accident, reported her gunner. I was aiming at that big asteroid, but they flew right into my missile spread. Keep it up, Walsh laughed. Aim at more asteroids? The random targeting patterns were causing havoc with Zephyrian defenses. Their shields were designed to handle concentrated fire from predictable directions. But scattered attacks from impossible angles were hitting weak spots that no logical enemy would ever target. Captain Santos noticed the first signs of real Zephyrian confusion when 3 enemy ships collided while trying to turn and counter the Liberty's impossible flight pattern. The alien vessels had been trying to predict where Santos would go next, but since she was flying randomly, their calculations led them straight into each other. Rodriguez, are you seeing this? Santos called to her first officer. Commander Lisa Rodriguez was watching her tactical display with amazement. Captain, their formation is starting to break apart. It looks like they are trying to predict our moves and getting confused when we do not make sense. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, who had been horrified by the idea of abandoning military tactics, was now grinning as he watched his random targeting system score hit after hit on bewildered enemy ships. Captain, I think their computers are having processing errors. They keep trying to find patterns in our chaos, but there are no patterns to find. The Zephyrians had built their entire military around the idea of perfect coordination. Every ship knew exactly where every other ship would be at any given moment. But the humans were destroying that coordination by being completely unpredictable. Enemy ships began firing on each other by mistake. Vessels that tried to reposition to counter human attacks ended up blocking the firing lines of their own allies. The mathematical precision that had been their greatest strength became a weakness when the enemy refused to behave mathematically. Santos opened a channel to the entire human fleet. All ships, Phase 1 is working perfectly. The enemy formation is falling apart. Now comes the really crazy part. Prepare for Phase 2. What she had planned for Phase 2 was so insane that even her own officers thought she had lost her mind completely. But they had seen the impossible start to happen. The mighty Zephyrian fleet was making mistakes, showing confusion, and taking damage from an enemy they should have destroyed in minutes. Captain Peter Johnson of the Phoenix was flying his ship upside down and backwards when he got Santos' next set of orders. He read them twice before calling her directly. Maria, are you sure about this? He asked. What you are asking us to do is beyond crazy. It is suicide. Peter, an hour ago we had a 1% chance of winning this battle using logical tactics, Santos replied. Now we have the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, confused and making mistakes. Trust me for one more phase. Across the battlefield, human ships continued their mad dance of destruction. The USS Montana was flying in figure-8 patterns while playing classical music and firing backwards. The USS Nevada had turned off its shields and was ramming through. Debris fields that would have destroyed any sane pilot. The Zephyrians were trying desperately to adapt to human insanity. Tactical Prime Zektar ordered his fleet to abandon their perfect formation and spread out to counter the random human attacks. All ships, break formation and engage targets individually, he commanded. The humans appear to have suffered complete tactical breakdown. We will destroy them one by one. But breaking formation was exactly what Santos had hoped they would do. The Zephyrian ships were no longer supporting each other with overlapping shields and coordinated fire. They were spread out and vulnerable. Now, Santos whispered to herself as she watched the enemy ships scatter. Phase 2, execute. The human fleet suddenly stopped their chaotic movements and reformed into a tight arrow formation pointing directly at the Dominion spear. But instead of attacking from long range like any rational military force would do, they began accelerating straight toward the enemy command ship at maximum speed. They have gone completely insane, Sub-Commander Veltash reported. All human ships are on collision course with our command vessel. They are attempting a mass ramming attack. Zektar could not believe what he was seeing. Probability analysis of ramming attack success. Calculating, his computer replied. Success probability is 0.03%. The attack would result in complete destruction of human forces with minimal damage to our vessel due to shield superiority. Then why are they doing it? Zektar wondered aloud. The answer came from Captain Santos herself. She had somehow managed to hack into the Zephyrian communication system, and her voice echoed across every enemy ship in the fleet. Because, she said with that same dangerous laugh that had started this whole impossible battle, you have been thinking like computers for so long that you forgot what desperation looks like. The human arrow formation streaked toward the Dominion spear, absorbing massive damage but never slowing down. Zephyrian gunners poured fire into the approaching ships, destroying several and damaging others, but the formation held together, just when it seemed like 37 human ships were about to commit suicide by ramming into the enemy command vessel. Santos gave the order that changed everything. All ships, emergency stop and full reverse. Morrison, fire everything we have directly into their shield generators. The sudden deceleration at point-blank range caught the Zephyrians completely unprepared. Their shields were designed to repel high-speed attacks from a distance. They had never been tested against concentrated fire from multiple ships at near-contact range. Chief Engineer Bobby Martinez, watching his displays with amazement, reported what everyone could see. Captain, their shield grid is failing. We punched right through their defenses. Captain Santos, her ship shaking from enemy fire and structural damage, made the call that would end the battle. All ships, everything you have left. Pour it all into that opening we just made. The concentrated firepower from 23 human ships at point-blank range was more than the Dominion Spear's shields could handle. The massive enemy command vessel, designed to withstand attacks from conventional battle formations, had never faced such close-range assault from desperate humans who refused to follow military logic. Explosions rippled across the alien ship's hull as its shield generators overloaded and failed. Secondary explosions began deep inside the vessel as human weapons found their mark. The ship that had seemed invincible just minutes before was now burning and listing to one side. Captain Maria Santos watched the destruction through the Liberty's main viewer. Her ship was badly damaged, with smoke filling the bridge and sparks flying from damaged consoles, but they were still fighting. Morrison, damage report on the enemy command ship, she ordered. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, his uniform torn and his face covered in soot, looked up from his tactical station with excitement. Captain, we have breached their main hull in 17 places. Their shield generators are completely offline. I am reading massive internal explosions and atmosphere venting from multiple decks. Commander Lisa Rodriguez, who had started this battle thinking they should evacuate Earth, now stood beside her captain with fierce pride. Maria, their command structure is collapsing. We are picking up confused communications from their other ships asking for orders. The destruction of the Zephyrian command ship created chaos throughout their entire fleet. For 47 battles, they had operated as a single coordinated unit with perfect communication and tactical control. Now, suddenly individual ship. Commanders found themselves without central guidance for the first time in their military careers aboard the heavy cruiser Destruction Blade. Commander Thekaral tried desperately to contact the Dominion Spear. Command vessel, respond. Request. Tactical instructions for continued engagement. But there was no response. The Dominion Spear was dying, its communication systems destroyed along with most of its command crew. Thekaral had to make decisions on his own. Something Zephyrian military doctrine had never prepared him for. Similar confusion was spreading throughout the enemy fleet. Ship commanders who had always received precise orders from their tactical computers and command staff were now forced to think independently. Some tried to continue the attack. Others began retreat procedures. Several started firing on damaged ships they mistook for human vessels in the smoke and debris. Captain Jennifer Walsh of the Dakota was chasing 3 Zephyrian destroyers that were fleeing in different directions. They do not know what to do without someone telling them, she reported to Santos. It is like they forgot how to fight on their own. The human fleet, battered and reduced to fewer than 20 operational ships, pressed their advantage. They had lost 17 vessels in the desperate assault on the enemy command ship, but those losses had purchased something invaluable: complete tactical confusion among their enemies. Santos opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, the enemy. Command structure is broken. They are operating individually now instead of as a coordinated force. Hunt them down before they can reorganize. What followed was unlike any space battle in recorded history. The humans, who had started the fight as a desperate underdog force, were now chasing down individual enemy ships that could not coordinate their defenses. The mathematical advantage that had made the Zephyrians seem invincible was gone. Captain Peter Johnson of the Phoenix found himself in a running battle with 2 enemy cruisers. Under normal circumstances, his single ship would have been destroyed quickly. But the enemy vessels kept getting in each other's way as they tried to maneuver without central coordination. "This is incredible," Johnson reported. "They just collided with each other trying to get a clear shot at me. One is venting atmosphere, and the other has lost power to its main weapons." The battle that should have lasted minutes and ended in human defeat was now in its 3rd hour. The Zephyrian fleet was scattered across the solar system, with individual ships making random decisions about whether to fight or flee. Some enemy commanders tried to rally their forces. Sub-Commander Veltash, who had survived the destruction of the Dominion Spear in an escape pod, attempted to coordinate a counterattack using his cruiser's communication system. "All vessels, form defensive pattern around coordinates 77 Alpha," he transmitted. "We will regroup and destroy the remaining human ships." But the response he received showed how completely their military discipline had collapsed. Some ships acknowledged his orders and moved to the coordinates. Others ignored him completely and continued their own battles. Several responded that they were already following orders from different commanders who were also trying to take control. Santos watched the enemy confusion with satisfaction. "Rodriguez, how many Zephyrian ships are still combat effective?" "Approximately 140 vessels, Captain," Rodriguez replied. "But they are spread across the entire system and showing no coordination. Many are actively interfering with each other." "And how many of their ships are retreating completely?" Rodriguez checked her sensors. "At least 60 vessels have left the combat area entirely. They appear to be heading for the edge of the solar system at maximum speed." Santos nodded. The plan was working even better than she had hoped. By destroying the enemy's ability to coordinate, they had turned a unified fleet into a collection of confused individual ships. Many were so panicked by the loss of central command that they were abandoning the battle completely, but the fight was not over yet. Even confused and disorganized, the remaining Zephyrian ships still outnumbered the humans by more than 6 to 1. If they managed to regroup, they could still win. "All ships, this is Santos," she transmitted to her fleet. We have them confused and scattered, but we need to finish this before they figure out how to work together again. Target their remaining heavy cruisers first? Without big ships to rally around, the smaller vessels will break and run. The human ships, now fighting with the confidence that came from achieving the impossible, began hunting down the largest enemy vessels. The US Montana cornered a Zephyrian battlecruiser that was trying to establish a command post and destroyed it with concentrated fire. The USS Nevada rammed a heavy destroyer that was attempting to coordinate nearby ships. Chief Engineer Bobby Martinez reported from the Liberty's engine room. Captain, we are running on backup power and our main weapons are at 60% capacity, but we can keep fighting. Good, Santos replied. Because I see a group of enemy ships trying to form up near the moon. We are going to break up their little party. The Liberty, smoke still pouring from its damaged sections, accelerated toward a cluster of 12 Zephyrian vessels that were attempting to establish a defensive formation. They were the first enemy ships to successfully coordinate since the destruction of their command ship, but Santos had learned something important during this battle. When humans stopped being predictable, they became incredibly dangerous. She had no intention of letting the enemy reorganize. Morrison, I want you to calculate the most illogical attack pattern you can think of, she ordered. Something so stupid that no military computer would ever recommend it. Morrison, who had discovered a talent for creative insanity during the battle, grinned as he worked at his console. Captain, I have an idea that is so crazy it just might work. What if we attack them from directly above while spinning like a drill and firing in all directions? Perfect, Santos said. Do it. The Liberty dove toward the enemy formation in a spiraling attack that made no tactical sense whatsoever. The Zephyrian ships, which had just started to feel confident about working together again, found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to defy all logic. Their carefully planned defensive formation fell apart as they tried to track at that, was spinning, diving, and firing randomly. Within minutes, the 12 ships were scattered again, with 3 destroyed and the others fleeing in panic. Santos looked at her tactical display and smiled. The mighty Zephyrian fleet that had seemed invincible 4 hours ago was now running away from a handful of battered human ships. All ships pursue and destroy, she ordered. Do not let them regroup. Keep them confused and scared until they all run away or surrender. The battle was turning into a rout, but Santos knew it was not over yet. There were still too many enemy ships left, and if they found a way to coordinate again, the humans would be in serious trouble. She needed to finish this quickly before her luck ran out. The chase continued for 2 more hours across the solar system. Human ships, outnumbered but no longer outmatched, hunted down confused Zephyrian vessels that could not coordinate their defenses. What had begun as humanity's darkest hour was becoming the enemy's worst nightmare. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the badly damaged Liberty and watched as another group of enemy ships broke formation and fled toward the outer planets. Her uniform was torn, her face was dirty with smoke, but her eyes were bright with victory. Captain, this is incredible, reported Lieutenant Jake Morrison from his tactical station. We are tracking massive retreat movements throughout the system. At least 200 enemy ships have abandoned the combat area completely. Commander Lisa Rodriguez, who had started the day recommending evacuation, now looked at her captain with something approaching awe. Maria, we have done something that should have been impossible. We have turned the most powerful fleet in the galaxy into a scattered mob of confused refugees. Santos smiled, but she knew the battle was not completely over. There were still enemy ships in the system, and some of them were trying to regroup. She opened the communication channel to the entire human fleet. All ships, this is Santos. We have achieved something amazing today, but we need to finish the job. There are still hostile vessels attempting to coordinate. Hunt them down and make sure they understand that Earth is not for conquest. The human ships, now numbering only 16 operational vessels, spread out across the solar system to continue their pursuit. They moved with confidence now, knowing that individual enemy ships were no match for humans who had learned to fight without rules. Captain, Jennifer Walsh of the Dakota cornered a Zephyrian heavy cruiser near Jupiter. The enemy ship was attempting to broadcast rally signals to other vessels in the area. Walsh's approach was simple and direct. "This is Captain Walsh of the UES Dakota," she transmitted to the alien ship. "You have 10 seconds to power down your weapons and surrender, or I will show you what humans do to bullies who threaten our home." The Zephyrian commander, isolated and confused without central command guidance, made the first smart decision any enemy officer had made all day. He powered down his weapons and prepared to surrender. Similar scenes were playing out across the system. Enemy ships that had dominated human forces for 6 months were now surrendering to individual human vessels. The psychological impact of losing their command structure had broken their will to fight. Admiral Patricia Wells watched the battle reports from her orbital command station with amazement. The impossible was happening. A human fleet that should have been destroyed in minutes was now accepting surrenders from alien vessels that outnumbered them 6-1. "Santos, this is Admiral Wells," she transmitted to the Liberty. "I am seeing surrender requests from 47 enemy vessels. How do you want to handle prisoners?" Santos looked at her tactical display. The red dots representing hostile ships were disappearing from her screen as enemy vessels either fled the system or surrendered. Only a few dozen Zephyrian ships were still showing as active threats. "Admiral, accept all surrenders and direct those ships to holding orbits around Mars," Santos replied. "But keep our weapons trained on them. I do not trust aliens who spent 6 months trying to kill us." The cleanup phase of the battle lasted another hour. Human ships moved through the system, collecting surrendering enemies and chasing off the few vessels that were still trying to fight. The once mighty Zephyrian invasion fleet was completely broken dot as the last enemy ship either surrendered or fled to the edge of the solar system. Santos finally allowed herself to believe that they had actually won. The Bridge of the Liberty fell silent as the crew realized what they had accomplished. "Morrison, final casualty report," Santos ordered. Lieutenant Morrison checked his displays one last time. "Captain, we lost 21 ships during the battle, but we destroyed or captured over 200 enemy vessels. The remaining Zephyrian ships have retreated beyond the outer planets and show no signs of returning." Santos walked to the main viewing screen and looked out at Earth, still blue and beautiful and free. Behind her, her crew was cheering and celebrating, but she felt strangely calm. "Captain," Commander Rodriguez said, joining her at the viewing screen. "How did you know it would work? When you started laughing at those 1% odds, how did you know we could win?" Santos was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Lisa, I did not know it would work. The math said we would lose. History said we would lose. Logic said we would lose. But I knew one thing for certain." "What was that?" "If we fought their battle using their rules with their predictable tactics, we would definitely lose," Santos explained. "The only chance we had was to stop being predictable. So we became something they could not calculate or understand." Chief Engineer Bobby Martinez joined them, his coveralls still covered in grease and soot from keeping the ship running during the battle. "Captain, I have to ask, when you first saw those odds and started laughing, did you have this whole plan worked out already?" Santos shook her head. "Bobby, I had no plan at all. I just knew that humans have been doing impossible things since we first looked up at the stars and decided to reach them. Sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to accept that losing is inevitable." The communication system crackled with a message from Admiral Wells. "All ships, this is Admiral Wells. I am pleased to report that Earth's orbital space is now clear of hostile vessels. The Zephyrian invasion has been completely defeated. This victory belongs to every human who refused to give up when the odds seemed impossible." She paused, and when she continued, her voice was full of emotion. "Special recognition goes to Captain Maria Santos and the crew of the UES Liberty, whose tactical innovation turned certain defeat into overwhelming victory. Captain Santos, you will be remembered as the officer who taught humanity that mathematics cannot account for human stubbornness." Santos keyed her response to the fleet communication system. "Admiral, this victory belongs to every human who looked at a 1% chance and decided to take it anyway." We won today because humans are too stupid to know when we are beaten, and too stubborn to quit even when we should. The crew of the Liberty burst into laughter and applause. Around the solar system, other human ships were celebrating in similar fashion. They had faced extinction and responded with the most human thing possible. They had refused to be logical about it. As rescue ships arrived to collect survivors and the damaged Liberty began limping toward Earth orbit, Santos made one final log entry. Personal log, Captain Maria Santos, UES Liberty. Today we learned something important about fighting impossible battles. The enemy had better technology, superior numbers, and mathematical certainty of victory. But they made one crucial mistake. They tried to fight humans using logic. She looked out at the stars where retreating Zephyrian ships were still fleeing toward deep space. The Zephyrian collective conquered 47 different species using logical warfare and predictable tactics. But they never faced a species crazy enough to laugh at 1% odds and try anyway. Today we showed the galaxy that humans do not fight with mathematics. We fight with hope, stubbornness, and just enough insanity to make the impossible happen. The battle was over. Earth was safe. And throughout the galaxy, other species would soon learn that when humans are given a 1% chance of victory, the smart money is not on the mathematics. 3 days later, the Zephyrian Collective sent a formal message to Earth. They were withdrawing from all human territory and offering a non-aggression treaty. Their message was brief and to the point. They had no desire to fight an enemy. That could not be predicted or understood. Captain Santos, reading the alien surrender document in her hospital bed while recovering from battle injuries, started laughing. Again, it was the same laughter that had started the whole impossible victory. Some battles were won with superior weapons. Others were won with better tactics. But this battle had been won with the most dangerous weapon in the human arsenal. The absolute refusal to accept that impossible meant defeat.